of the most potent exercises. What makes these exercises so potent is not just that they target pretty much every single muscle fiber in your body, but because they put together the most important training aspects into one movement. That is strength, that is coordination, that is flexibility, and it is endurance, which fits perfectly into the theme of this channel being peak efficiency. So if you're ready, let's go and have some fun. Starting with the most important exercise. Well, this looks like probably one of the easiest exercises you've ever seen. It is one of the hardest exercises I have ever done. Lay down completely, back flat on the floor. Number 1, point your toes. Number 2, press your legs together. Number 3, extend your legs by flexing your quads, which is going to extend your knee. For some of you, if you have the control and the strength, your heels will start raising from the floor, and now we have complete tension in our lower body. Now comes the really important part, the most important part, which is tilting your pelvis, complete anterior tilt until your lower back is in full contact with the floor. If your head still has space, tilt it even more. Spinal erectors in full contact with the floor. And now what's going to happen for most is you're going to lose the tension in your legs because you do not have the strength, you do not have the control. Keep everything as tense and as flexed as we said before. Now we're going to lengthen our shoulders and press our hands downwards against the floor, and then lengthen them as far as we can and pull them together. It should look something like this, and if you're doing it right, just holding this for 5 to 10 seconds will probably be the hardest thing you have ever done in your life. Take a short break and repeat once more. Do it once or twice for 10 to 15 seconds, and then go into your handstand and see the instant difference you can have with it. This moves us to my favorite exercise, the pull-up, and we have variations out the wazoo, starting with the easiest one first, and the ones that you need to do to build the necessary foundation to advance to the more complicated ones. The most important one you will learn in the beginning, and that is going to make a world's difference in how far you can advance with the other variations, would be the scapular pull-up. Starting in a dead hang, all we need to do is adduct our shoulder blades and depress them before we abduct and elevate. Scapular positioning is one of the most important things you will learn throughout your calisthenics journey, and if you cannot do that in a controlled fashion, then you will suffer the consequences, being that you will progress much slower and you will have a lot of problems in your form. Now, of course, since we also have a lot of unilateral movements, we have to do the same thing for the scapular pull-up, being a single-sided or unilateral scapular pull-up. This time we have some upward rotation in our scapula as well before we switch positions. Now, you will already notice that this is basically the beginner movement for the archer pull-up. So this will already teach you how to activate the necessary muscles you need for more advanced stuff. Then we can finally move on to some of the beginner variations. Underhand grip will be the easiest variation because this one is more biceps dominant and less back dominant. Wide overhand grip is less arm dominant and more latissimus dominant, requiring a little bit more strength, a little bit more control, and is going to take some time before you truly advance there. Now, I would advise that you learn to do 5 to 10 repetitions of each of those before you move on to the more advanced ones, because this is going to build the foundation you will need for them. With our first advanced variation, of course, being the archer pull-up, one arm always fully extended, the other one bending, meaning we have a lot more unilateral pull, requiring more strength from one side than the other. And of course, we want to have full range of motion, always bringing our chin above the bar before we move to the other side. And then we can combine the latissimus pull-up with the archer pull-up, moving to the typewriter pull-up, first to the middle, then complete extended to the lateral side, complete extension, lateral other side, back to the middle, and only then do we reverse all the way back down into a dead hang. This upcoming pull-up is going to put all of the movements we just did together into one single fluent motion, starting with an archer, lateral movement at the very top, reversing an archer, going to those circular pull-ups, which which require a lot of strength, a lot of control, and a lot of body tension to go through the full range of motion. Go through the exercises with some assistance until you feel super safe in doing the movement pattern, and only then should you remove the assistance and go through those exercises all by yourself. A flat-footed deep squat, and there is a reason why we usually start with the deep squat when we talk about foundational mobility, because the deep squat as a resting position is a gateway to a mind-boggling amount of mobility patterns that help you advance much further, and most people that start with the deep squat don't stop there and usually fall much deeper into the mobility rabbit hole. Not only is this a very natural resting position that we've been using for basically our entire existence, being able to do something as simple as squatting down with your feet flat and being able to relax in this position can have an insane amount of quality of life benefits. And there is one simple trick that can make basically everyone squat this deep, and that is this. Elevating your heels like so will take off pretty much all the necessary mobility you need in your hips, knees, and ankles, as well as the necessary core strength and hip flexor strength to sit down fully like so. And to get better at this, all you need to do is just sit down and enjoy this position for a handful of minutes over the course of the day, and over time, the more mobile you become, the more you will decrease that elevation until your feet are fully flat. There is almost zero effort to this, giving you absolutely zero excuse not to work on this. Now, our second must-do mobility threshold is basically just touching your toes while your legs are fully extended and your back is somewhat in a neutral position, which is the minimum amount of posterior chain flexibility you need to have to not suffer a lot of problems as you age, and most importantly, as you become stronger with other training methods that you might be using. Because strength without flexibility leads to a lot of quality of life problems that you do not want to go through. While the classic toe touch or the forward fold is the beginner level, over time, most of you will want to advance past that into a complete forward fold or a complete pike position. When folding forward to touch your toes, try not to flex your spine, meaning rounding your spine and lengthening your shoulders to compensate for a lack of flexibility in your lower body by lengthening your upper body. Instead, start hinging your hip into spinal extension before you start folding forward. Keep your back fully extended, and you're already going to notice a stretch by hinging forward the tiniest bit. Over time, you should be able to bring your fingertips all the way down to the floor while your back is completely extended. And that is a sign for you that you do not need to advance if you do not want to. With the second most common problem when people fold forward being that their hips start moving backwards to compensate for a lack of flexibility in their lower leg musculature, because lengthening the angle in your ankles into more of an extension will release the stretch you have around your Achilles, your gastric and soleus. Now, the absolute easiest way to not fall into this problem is working very closely to a wall, which is going to keep you from pushing your hips backwards while you are starting to fold forward. Now, once again, extend your back and just hinge in your hip the tiniest bit and hold this stretch for 20 to 30 seconds. An exercise that is going to make this much more beneficial for you is both a stiff-legged deadlift, which is going to combine the flexibility you are building with a lot of strength in your posterior chain, as well as the Jefferson curl, where instead of using your back in an extension, you're going to go into full flexion, lengthening and rounding every single vertebrae until you're all the way down at the end of your range of motion, before once again reversing this movement, strengthening all the surrounding musculature in your posterior chain and helping you strengthen your back in a somewhat compromised position where we are rounded when folding forward. Combining these two exercises with the classic stretch for the forward fold is going to make a world's difference when it comes to your quality of life. High box jumps from a standing position, meaning we're gonna start with our feet slightly wider than shoulder width apart and jump up all the way. Now, I would suggest working your way up to 100 centimeters or 1 meter, which is about I think 7 or 8 bald eagles in freedom units. You can start with a very low jump and build the necessary strength as well as coordination to get up there, and over time increase that distance until you can do the full jump from a standing starting position. Once you're up here, don't forget to get up all the way so we can add the tiniest bit of quad strength as well. And one thing I would highly suggest adding to this, which is going to make this a lot more effective, the single leg box jump, which is going to require a little bit more of everything. Once again, progressive overload, building up more strength so we can jump higher and higher and higher. Not only is this great for building explosive strength, it's also amazing for building general control over your leg musculature, which is going to be very important when it comes to exercises such as the pistol squat or the shrimp squat and all the other advanced squat variations you might want to learn later. Moving us to one of the exercises that is by far one of my absolute favorites, which is the walking weighted lunge. Carrying around weights with long lunging movements for maximum engagement of our leg musculature. Absurd inclusion of our core musculature, especially if we go for the combo of heavy weight on one side, lighter weight on the other side, so we have even more stabilization work from our core. We have a massive hip mobility and flexibility bonus, especially for our hip flexor, which doesn't get enough flexibility work as it is, and combines that with hip flexor strength as well. And while this is more of a quad dominant exercise, you are still targeting every muscle in your lower body, every muscle in your core. And now comes the interesting part, because depending on where you place the weight, now you can add shoulder and arm and upper body strength and even back engagement as well, making this an amazing full body exercise that you can tweak with tiny adjustments, working on your flexibility, working on your asymmetrical coordination due to the unilateral nature of the movement, and putting all of this together into one fluent motion. The insane efficiency of crawling exercises, which is why we'll start with two of the most potent ones. Number one being the lizard walk, probably the one where we are lowest to the ground while working with all four appendages in an asymmetrical movement pattern with a lot of hip rotation and the combination of upper body and lower body strength. Simultaneously working on our hip mobility, our shoulder mobility, opening up our chest and shoulders, stretching out our glutes and our hips as well as our hamstrings, and doing that while going through movements that require an insane amount of strength and a lot of endurance to go through for longer than 20 seconds without falling apart. If there is one crawling exercise that combines strength, coordination, flexibility and endurance as perfectly as the lizard walk, then it is the backwards lizard walk, requiring a lot more from all of these aspects. I'd highly suggest you work on this one if you want to become an absolute calisthenics beast, but even more so if you want to learn how to control your entire body in perfect coordination. And our second one being the ape-like movement pattern, specifically the short lateral ape movement, the longer lateral ape movement with one leg completely extended, so we have this insane switch in our hip from one side to the other, basically a low cossack squat to switch positions. The low frontal ape, where our hips are as low to the ground as possible and our knees are almost touching the floor, forcing us to have a maximum of quad and hip flexor engagement, as well as a lot of flexibility bonus added to this exercise. And the high ape-like movement patterns, where our hips are at the very least at shoulder height, so we have a lot of leg engagement combined with now more upper body strength engagement due to our body weight being shifted more forward and more to the top. And if you want to make this really effective, then switching from one to the other, to the next one, to the next one, and combining all of them through one flow will help you work even more on your coordination, basically on your entire body mobility, while adding an insane amount of strength and endurance requirements, which you can see in my face from just running up and down 2 or 3 times. All about push exercises. And since we want to start with perfect form from the beginning, so we can start learning how to do it correctly, we're going to start with assisted push-ups. Hands turned slightly inwards. Our elbows will open up sideways into a 45-degree angle to our latissimus. We're going to extend our back, and now this is very important. We're going to flex our abdominals to go into an anterior pelvic tilt, and from here we're going to lengthen our shoulders around our upper back as well, so we have the maximum range of motion when moving downwards as well as moving upwards, actively pushing them towards each other before we move into the next repetition. Those last couple of centimeters in the end of your range of motion are going to make a world's difference when pushing up. For our next level, we're going to raise our knees and go through the exact same movement pattern, which is a little bit more chest dominant. Once again, making sure that you have complete anterior chain tension and the full range of motion. Moving doing 2 more triceps dominant push-ups by turning our shoulders into external rotation, meaning our elbows are pointing backwards and keeping our arms as close to our upper body as possible. Taking over with our triceps instead of having most of the weight being pushed by our chest. These 2 pushing variations will make up the foundation, and now we can start with the fun part. Close together, forming a triangle, going into diamond push-ups, which are very arm dominant, opening up very wide. One arm always extended while the other arm bends. Archer push-ups are very chest dominant and have the bonus of stretching out your pectorals and your anterior delts for a little bit more flexibility bonus as well, but require a lot of strength. And staying in the same ballpark when it comes to grip width, we will go through the typewriter push-up, which this time means we're going to move down in the middle before we move laterally at the bottom of the movement, like so, and then reverse to the middle. We can put the last 2 together into a combo move of circular movements, being an archer and a typewriter in one single exercise pattern, like so, requiring a massive amount of strength and opening up your chest, which feels absolutely amazing. Then of course, we have the Hindu push-up, which is going to help us with some spinal mobility, especially when it comes to spinal extension, and is going to put a lot of dominance on our shoulders as well in this movement pattern. Just like so. And that one is very similar to the pike push-up, which requires a lot of posterior chain flexibility. Consider that a bonus in your pushing exercise. And building upon my last video, using my favorite leg exercise with a tiny weight, just so I can demonstrate all of them. And we will start with a classic deep cossack with external hip rotation on one side, lengthening our adductors as well as our posterior chain while having massive engagement in our quads. And this asymmetrical movement pattern is going to help us a lot with coordination as well as asymmetrical strength. And then we're going to start adding posterior chain strength as well. Since this is more of a quad dominant exercise, now we can start adding our biceps and our glutes before we reverse move all the way up, all the way down on the other side. We have a little bit more engagement of our posterior chain added to all of those quad engagements. With the next variation, we're going to increase our range of motion even more. Instead of pushing our hip forward, we're going to push it backwards, so we have the maximum amount of ankle, knee, and hip mobility we can get from this exercise. Reverse using your own strength. If you want to take this movement even a step further, you're going to lower into the cossack, bring your knee down, push your hips backwards, and now we're going to fold forward for maximum posterior chain stretch once more, going through our legs and all the way up through our back as well, and even lengthening our neck the tiniest bit for releasing some of the tension we might be carrying there. And of course, reversing from here takes a lot of strength and a lot of control before you repeat the same exact movement on the other side. For the final variation, we're going to combine total body flexibility and mobility with a lot of coordination and a lot of strength. We're going to grab our kettlebell, just like so. Lower into the cossack, cross over with your hand behind your extended leg, just like so. You're gonna start pushing your hips upwards and lengthening your arm. We have a nice stretch throughout our entire anterior chain, moving through our ankles towards our tibialis, our quadriceps, our hip flexors, our abdominals, our chest and shoulders, and even lengthening our arms all the way, stretching our triceps. Before we reverse, move forward, elevate once more, and repeat on the same side for a handful of times, just like so. This movement pattern is going to make you an absolute leg strength beast and help you combine your lower body strength with your upper body strength while working on maximizing your flexibility benefits you can get from kettlebell exercises, especially the ones that are usually focused more on leg strength. With that said, if you like the video, and come on, subscribe. We do stuff like that almost every single day, and I will probably see you tomorrow. So until then, Captain Cairo, peace out.